If three strangers, living in three different cities, who have never met each other, were shown the same invisible picture of your future, and all three described the same face, would you still call it coincidence? Listen carefully. Because this message is not for everyone. It is for the person who has been wondering why love has been delayed. It is for the person who has prayed, God, if there is someone for me, please let me recognize them. It is for the person who has been hurt so many times that even the idea of love now feels dangerous. And it is especially for the person who has secretly asked God one question that nobody else knows about. Where is my person? Tonight, I want you to imagine something. 3 psychics. 3 different cities. 3 completely separate sessions. 3 people who never spoke to one another. And yet, when they were asked to describe the person connected to one particular soul, they all described the same face. Your face. Before you decide that this is impossible, stay with me. Because the most important part is not that they described you. The most important part is why they were able to describe you. And why the person who hired them may have been searching for you long before you ever knew their name. In this dramatized spiritual message, imagine these words as a faith-centered reflection spoken in the voice of Jesus and Archangel Michael, not as a claim of literal supernatural communication. Now breathe. Do not scroll. Do not skip. Because if you have ever wondered whether your love story was already being prepared before you even knew what to pray for, you need to hear this entire message. Jesus says, "My beloved child, there are seasons in your life when silence looks like rejection, but silence is not always rejection. Sometimes silence is preparation. Sometimes the door that refuses to open is protecting you from walking into a room that was never designed for your future. Sometimes the person you desperately wanted was never the person who could carry the destiny you were praying for. And sometimes what felt like heartbreak was actually separation. Separation from what would have destroyed you. Separation from what would have distracted you. Separation from someone who could hold your hand but could never hold your heart with the care it needed. You thought you were being forgotten. You were being redirected. You thought love had passed you by. You were being protected. You thought everyone else was moving forward while you were standing still. But heaven was not standing still. There were things being arranged that you could not see. There were conversations happening that you were not present for. There were decisions being made in another person's life that would eventually change the direction of yours. And there was a person somewhere in this world whose life was moving toward a moment when your paths could finally cross. That person may have never known your name. They may have never seen your face. They may have never heard your voice. And yet they may have been praying for someone exactly like you. Not your social media version. Not the version of you that smiles when you're exhausted. Not the version of you that pretends everything is fine. The real you. The person behind the eyes. The person behind the scars. The person who has survived things nobody applauded you for surviving. The person who learned how to be strong because there was nobody else available to be strong for you. The person who gives love even after love disappointed you. That is the person this message is speaking to. Now imagine the first psychic. She lives in New York. The person who hired her sits across the table. He doesn't give her your name. He doesn't show her your photograph. He doesn't tell her your city. He doesn't tell her your age. He simply asks one question. Can you describe the person I am meant to meet? The psychic closes her eyes. She becomes quiet. Then she says something strange. I see someone with a face that feels familiar. The person across from her asks, what do you mean? She says, I don't know this person, but I feel like you do. She begins describing the eyes. Then the smile. Then the shape of the face. Then something about the way this person looks when they are thinking deeply. The person listening becomes uncomfortable. Because the description is too specific. The psychic continues. This person has been through disappointment. They don't trust easily. They are kind, but they have boundaries now. They have learned to walk away. They look strong, but there is a softness in them that only a few people ever see. And then she says something that changes everything. I feel like you have already been looking for this person without knowing exactly who you were looking for. Now stop. If you have ever felt like someone was looking for you before you even met them, type "I believe" in the comments. Not because a comment creates destiny. It doesn't. But because sometimes putting your hope into words reminds your own heart that you have not given up. Now go back to the story. The first psychic describes a face. But the person who hired her does not believe it. So he travels. Not because he is convinced. Because he wants proof. He goes to another city. Los Angeles. Different psychic. Different environment. Different person. No communication between them. No photograph. No description from the first session. He asks the same question. Describe the person connected to my future. The second psychic closes her eyes. And then something happens that he never expected. She describes the same eyes. The same expression. The same facial structure. The same emotional energy. She even says something remarkably similar. This person has experienced betrayal. The person listening freezes. How do you know that? She answers, I don't know. Then she describes someone who has become careful with their heart. Someone who does not fall for words anymore. Someone who watches actions. Someone who can sense when something is fake. Someone who wants love but refuses to beg for it. And then she says, this person is closer to your future than you think. Now imagine the shock. 2 cities. 2 strangers. 2 separate sessions. 1 face. But he still isn't convinced. So he tries one more time. He goes to a 3rd city. Chicago. A 3rd psychic. A 3rd stranger. And this time he gives almost no information. He simply asks the question. Who is the person I am supposed to meet? The 3rd psychic becomes quiet. She looks confused. Then she says something that makes him sit forward. I see a face. He asks, whose face? She says, I don't know. Then she describes you. Not just your appearance. Your energy. Your guarded heart. Your kindness. Your independence. Your emotional history. Your tendency to think too much. Your tendency to love deeply. Your fear of giving everything to someone who only gives you half of themselves. And then she says the words that make his entire body go still. I have seen this face before. He asks, where? She says, not in person. Then where? In the feeling. Now listen to this. Maybe the most powerful part of this entire message is not whether 3 psychics can predict a future. The deeper message is this: you may be spending your life looking for proof that you are lovable, while the right person may be looking for the very qualities you keep trying to hide. You think your scars make you difficult. Someone else may see them as evidence of your strength. You think your sensitivity is a weakness. Someone else may see it as the reason they feel safe around you. You think your independence means nobody will choose you. The right person may admire that you learned how to stand on your own. You think your past disqualifies you. God can use your past to teach you what your future should never look like again. Jesus says, my child, stop measuring your future by the people who mishandled your past. That sentence deserves to stay with you. Stop measuring your future by the people who mishandled your past. Someone abandoning you does not mean you are unworthy of commitment. Someone cheating on you does not mean everyone will betray you. Someone lying to you does not mean you are destined to live without honesty. Someone choosing another person does not mean you were less valuable. Someone failing to recognize your worth does not reduce your worth. The wrong person's inability to love you is not evidence that you are impossible to love. Let that sink in. Because some of you have been carrying somebody else's rejection like it was a prophecy about your entire life. It wasn't. It was an event. Not a prophecy. It happened. But it does not get to define what happens next. Archangel Michael says, do not build your identity around the wound that was created when someone failed to honor your heart. You are allowed to heal. You are allowed to trust again. You are allowed to believe that love can arrive differently. Not louder. Not more dramatic. Differently. The soulmate you are imagining may not enter your life with fireworks. They may enter quietly. A conversation. A mutual friend. A workplace interaction. A trip. A coffee shop. A message. A random invitation you almost declined. A place you almost didn't go. A decision that seems meaningless today could become the doorway through which your future walks. That's why you cannot assume that nothing is happening just because you cannot see it yet. There are seasons where the most important movement in your life happens behind the scenes. You don't see the seed growing beneath the soil. That doesn't mean nothing is happening. You don't see the roots. That doesn't mean there are no roots. You don't see the sunrise while you're sleeping. That doesn't mean the sun has disappeared. And you don't see the future person right now. That doesn't mean your future is empty. But here is the warning. Do not become obsessed with a specific face. Do not chase strangers because you think they are the one. Do not abandon wisdom because you heard a spiritual message. Do not ignore red flags because someone feels familiar. Do not call every coincidence a divine sign. Discernment matters. Character matters. Actions matter. Consistency matters. Respect matters. A person who is truly good for your life will not require you to destroy your peace to keep them. They will not manipulate your emotions. They will not make you constantly prove your value. They will not keep you confused on purpose. They will not demand access to your heart while refusing to take responsibility for the impact they have on it. Real love does not need emotional chaos to feel intense. Real love can be peaceful. Real love can be patient. Real love can be honest. Real love can say, I was wrong. Real love can say, I understand why that hurt you. Real love can say, let's fix this. Real love does not make you feel like you have to audition for basic respect. Jesus says, my child, do not confuse anxiety with destiny. That may be one of the most important lines you hear today. Some connections feel powerful because they activate your deepest fears. That is not always love. Sometimes it is your nervous system reacting to uncertainty. Sometimes the person who makes you constantly wonder where you stand feels more exciting than the person who simply stands beside you. But peace can feel unfamiliar when chaos is what you learned. So don't reject peace just because it doesn't give you the adrenaline that confusion once gave you. Your soulmate does not have to recreate your wounds to prove that the connection is real. They may actually help you stop living inside those wounds. Now, imagine the person who hired those 3 psychics. After the 3rd session, he goes home. He has 3 descriptions. 3 different cities. 3 different people. 1 face. And now he starts thinking about every person he has ever met. But there is a problem. He doesn't know your name. He doesn't know where you live. He doesn't know how to find you. And perhaps that's the point. Because the purpose of the mystery isn't to make you chase. The purpose is to teach you that some things cannot be forced. You cannot force a door open that God is asking you to wait beside. You cannot force someone to become emotionally ready. You cannot force timing. You cannot force maturity. You cannot force genuine love. And if you have to manipulate someone into choosing you, they are not choosing you. They are responding to pressure. You deserve a love that chooses you freely. Now I want you to do something. Think of the last person who broke your heart. Don't write their name. Don't explain the story. Just remember how you felt. Remember the night you couldn't sleep. Remember the moment you realized something had changed. Remember how you questioned yourself. Remember how you wondered whether you were enough. Now imagine Jesus saying, "My child, that chapter was not the whole book. You were reading one page and calling it the ending. You were standing inside one storm and assuming the weather would never change. You were grieving one relationship and believing you had lost your only chance at love. But your life is larger than one person. Your future is larger than one breakup. Your purpose is larger than one rejection. And your worth is larger than somebody's opinion." Archangel Michael says, "Release the need to be chosen by people who repeatedly demonstrate that they do not know how to value you." Read that again in your heart. You don't need to convince someone to recognize you. You don't need to become smaller so someone feels bigger. You don't need to silence your needs so someone stays. You don't need to accept disrespect because you are afraid of being alone. Being alone for a season is not the same thing as being abandoned by life. Sometimes solitude is where you learn what peace feels like. Sometimes being single is where you discover that you can build a beautiful life without waiting for another person to validate it. And then, when love arrives, it becomes an addition to your life rather than the rescue of your life. That difference matters. Because your soulmate is not supposed to become your oxygen. They are supposed to become your companion. You should still be you. They should still be them. Two whole people choosing to build something together. Not two broken people demanding that the other repair every wound. Jesus says, "I do not want you to enter love desperate for rescue. I want you to enter love ready for partnership." That is why the waiting season may be doing more than you realize. You are learning boundaries. You are learning communication. You are learning patience. You are learning what manipulation looks like. You are learning how to apologize. You are learning how to leave when respect disappears. You are learning how to receive love without suspecting every kindness. You are learning how to stop chasing. And perhaps somewhere, someone else is learning the same lessons. Maybe they are healing too. Maybe they are asking why their previous relationships failed. Maybe they are becoming more emotionally mature. Maybe they are learning to communicate instead of shutting down. Maybe they are finally understanding what commitment really means. Maybe their life is being rearranged just as yours has been. And you may never know how much preparation happened before the meeting. That is the mystery. You see the moment. You don't see the preparation. You see two people meeting. You don't see the years that shaped them into the people who could finally meet. You see the first conversation. You don't see every heartbreak that taught them what they needed to value. You see the smile. You don't see the tears that came before it. You see the relationship. You don't see the healing that made it possible. So if you are waiting, don't waste the waiting. Become the person who can recognize healthy love. Become the person who doesn't run from kindness because it feels unfamiliar. Become the person who doesn't chase inconsistency because it feels exciting. Become the person who can say yes without losing yourself. Become the person who can say no without feeling guilty. Become the person who knows that love should never require self-betrayal. Now let's return to the three psychics. The first described your face. The second described your emotional nature. The third described something even more unusual. She said, "This person doesn't realize how close they are to a major change." The person who hired her asks, "What kind of change?" She says, "Love." But then she corrects herself. Not just romance. A change in the way this person understands love. And that is where this message becomes bigger than a soulmate story. Because maybe your greatest miracle is not simply meeting somebody. Maybe it is finally understanding that love doesn't have to hurt the way it used to. Maybe your miracle is discovering that someone can disagree with you without humiliating you. Someone can be angry without threatening to leave. Someone can need space without punishing you. Someone can be honest without being cruel. Someone can be committed without controlling you. Someone can love you without trying to possess you. That is the kind of love worth waiting for. And if someone enters your life and immediately asks you to abandon your values, your peace, your family, your friendships, your boundaries, or your relationship with God, be careful. Intensity is not always intimacy. Possession is not protection. Jealousy is not proof of love. Obsession is not commitment. And spiritual language does not make unhealthy behavior holy. Discernment is part of faith. Jesus says, "Love what is good, but do not call every powerful feeling good." That is important. Because sometimes we want the sign so badly that we stop looking at the fruit. Look at the fruit. How does this person treat people who cannot benefit them? How do they speak about their exes? How do they handle disappointment? How do they treat service workers? How do they respond when you say no? How do they behave when nobody is watching? How do they treat your boundaries? How do they respond when you succeed? How do they act when you need support? These things tell you more than 1,000 romantic words. Your soulmate should not merely know how to make you feel butterflies. They should know how to make you feel safe. And safety is not boring. Safety is beautiful. There is a kind of love where you don't have to decode every text. You don't have to wonder why they disappeared. You don't have to compete with other people for basic attention. You don't have to constantly wonder whether they still want you. You don't have to perform. You can breathe. You can be yourself. You can laugh. You can cry. You can say, "That hurt me." And instead of being punished for your honesty, you are heard. That is the kind of connection you should desire. Now if you are watching this from the United States, from New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Texas, Florida, Georgia, Arizona, California, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, or somewhere nobody else would guess, understand something. Your location does not make you invisible. Your age does not make you too late. Your past does not make you disqualified. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not too difficult. You are not too much. And you are not running out of time. The world may make you feel like love has an expiration date. It doesn't work that way. People meet at 20. People meet at 30. People meet at 40. People meet at 50. People meet after divorce. People meet after years of being single. People meet when they had stopped looking. Life does not follow the schedule social media gives you. You don't need to compare your chapter 5 to somebody else's chapter 20. And if you are watching this while secretly wondering whether you will ever experience the kind of love you see other people celebrating, hear this: do not let somebody else's highlight reel become evidence against your future. You don't know their private life. You don't know their struggles. You don't know what happens behind closed doors. You only see what they chose to show you. Your life is not late because someone else's life looks faster. Now I want you to imagine the fourth scene. Not another psychic. Not another prediction. You. Standing in front of a mirror. You look at your own face. The same face those three strangers supposedly described. But you don't see what they saw. You see imperfections. You see tiredness. You see years. You see mistakes. You see things you wish you could change. But what if you looked again? What if you saw the person who survived? What if you saw the person who kept going? What if you saw the person who still knows how to love after being hurt? What if you saw the person who learned to protect their heart without completely closing it? What if you saw someone worth choosing? Jesus says, before someone else recognizes your face, recognize your own worth. Because there is a danger in soulmate thinking. You can become so focused on someone else finding you that you forget to find yourself. Don't do that. Build your life. Learn. Travel. Create. Serve. Laugh. Make friends. Take care of your responsibilities. Strengthen your relationship with God. Become emotionally healthy. Become financially responsible. Become honest with yourself. Learn what you actually want. And when love comes, don't make it your entire identity. Let it be part of a beautiful life. Now here is something else. Maybe the three psychics were never the important part. Maybe the story is symbolic. Maybe it represents the strange way life sometimes confirms what your heart already knows. Three separate voices. Three different places. One description. And perhaps the lesson is not, go find a psychic. The lesson is, you don't have to chase what is meant to meet you. That does not mean you sit on the couch and do nothing. It means you don't live in desperation. You participate in life. You make wise choices. You remain open. You use discernment. You pray. You meet people. You allow yourself to be known. But you don't beg. You don't chase. You don't force. You don't settle. And you don't confuse loneliness with a command to accept whoever shows interest. Because loneliness can make bad options look like miracles. Do not let loneliness choose your future. Let wisdom choose. Let character choose. Let peace choose. Let time reveal character. And if someone is right for you, you won't need to manufacture every step. There will still be challenges. There will still be misunderstandings. There will still be difficult conversations. But there will be mutual effort. That matters. Now imagine Archangel Michael standing at the symbolic doorway of your future. Not as a figure to worship, but as a representation of courage, protection, and spiritual strength. And imagine him saying, do not fear the ending of what was never meant to remain. You may be holding on to someone because you are afraid there will never be another. Release the fear. You may be tempted to text someone who repeatedly gives you crumbs because you miss them. Pause. You may be tempted to return to a relationship simply because being familiar feels safer than being alone. Think carefully. You may be tempted to accept less because you are tired of waiting. Don't let exhaustion negotiate your standards. You may think, maybe this is the best I can get. No. You don't know what tomorrow holds. But you do know what you deserve today. Respect. Honesty. Reciprocity. Consistency. Kindness. And if a person cannot offer those things, your loneliness is not a reason to lower the standard. Now I want you to listen to this carefully. If you have been praying for your future spouse, don't only pray, God, send me someone. Pray, God, make me someone who can love wisely. Pray, give me discernment. Give me patience. Help me recognize what is healthy. Help me walk away from what is harmful. Help me not confuse chemistry with character. Help me not ignore red flags because I am afraid of being alone. Help me become emotionally ready for the kind of relationship I desire. Those prayers can change you. Because sometimes the answer to, where is my person, begins with, who are you becoming? Your future relationship cannot be healthier than the people entering it. So become healthy. Not perfect. Healthy. Learn to communicate. Learn to listen. Learn to apologize. Learn to forgive without becoming available for repeated harm. Learn to love without losing yourself. Learn to receive without suspicion. Learn to give without keeping score. That's preparation. Now, perhaps you're thinking, but what if I already met them? Maybe. Maybe you have. Maybe you haven't. And this message cannot tell you that a specific person is your soulmate. No message can responsibly replace real discernment. If you think someone may be important in your life, look at reality. How do they treat you? How consistent are they? Do they respect your boundaries? Do they make room for you? Do they communicate? Do they show up? Do their actions match their words? Does the relationship help you become more yourself or less yourself? Those answers matter. Because destiny language can be seductive. But character is measurable. And the healthiest love is not merely something you feel. It is something you build. Brick by brick. Conversation by conversation. Choice by choice. Day by day. Now imagine the person who hired the 3 psychics receives one final message. The 3rd psychic tells him, "You keep asking where this person is." He says yes. She says, "Stop asking where." He looks confused. She continues, "Ask whether you are ready to recognize them when they arrive." That changes him. Because he realizes he has been searching for a face. But he needed to become capable of recognizing a heart. Maybe that's your lesson too. Stop searching for perfection. Search for character. Stop searching for someone who gives you constant excitement. Look for someone who gives you peace. Stop searching for someone who never disagrees. Look for someone who can disagree with respect. Stop searching for someone who says all the right things. Look for someone whose behavior confirms their words. Stop searching for someone who makes you feel chosen for one night. Look for someone who chooses you consistently. That is the difference between fantasy and mature love. Jesus says, "My child, I am not asking you to predict tomorrow. I am asking you to live today with wisdom." You don't need to know exactly when. You don't need to know exactly where. You don't need to know exactly how. You need to know who you are. And you need to know what you will no longer accept. That is enough for today. Now if this message has touched something inside you, don't just type a random word. Write one sentence in the comments, "I am ready for healthy love." That's it. Not because comments control your future. They don't. Write it because you are making a declaration to yourself. I am ready for healthy love. And if you are not ready yet, write, "I am healing." There is no shame in that. Healing is not failure. Healing is preparation. Maybe you're watching this at 2 a.m. Maybe you're lying in bed wondering why somebody didn't choose you. Maybe you're driving home from work. Maybe you're sitting alone in your apartment. Maybe you're a single parent wondering whether anyone will ever see the person behind your responsibilities. Maybe you've been divorced. Maybe you've never been married. Maybe you've spent years taking care of everyone else. Maybe you have become so independent that you don't even know how to let someone help you anymore. Hear this, you are still worthy of tenderness. You are still worthy of partnership. You are still worthy of being known. You are still worthy of being chosen. And you do not need to pretend that you have never been hurt. The right person will not need you to erase your history. They will want to understand it. But they also won't make your wounds their playground. They will respect the parts of you that are still healing. And you will respect the parts of them that are still healing too. Because soulmate does not mean perfect person. It means a person with whom you can build something deeply compatible, honest, respectful, and meaningful. There may be disagreements. There may be hard days. There may be moments when one person needs more patience than the other. But underneath it all, there is commitment. There is respect. There is a willingness to repair. That is what matters. Now let's go back one last time to those 3 cities. New York. Los Angeles. Chicago. 3 people. 3 sessions. One face. Your face. But perhaps the face was never the miracle. The miracle was the possibility that somewhere beyond what you can currently see, another person's life may be moving toward an intersection with yours. And maybe your job isn't to obsess over the intersection. Your job is to prepare the road. Clear the old baggage. Heal what needs healing. Close the doors that should stay closed. Forgive where forgiveness is healthy. Stop reopening wounds just to see whether they still hurt. Stop checking the profile. Stop rereading the old message. Stop waiting for someone to become the person they repeatedly prove they are not. Your future needs space. Sometimes you cannot welcome something new because you are still emotionally reserving a room for someone who left. Let the room go. Not because they were worthless. Because the chapter is finished. You can honor what happened without living inside it. You can be grateful for what you learned without returning to what hurt you. You can love someone and still choose distance. You can forgive someone and still choose boundaries. You can miss someone and still know they are not good for your future. That is maturity. Archangel Michael says, courage is not only fighting for what you want. Sometimes courage is walking away from what you know you cannot safely keep. That is powerful. Sometimes the strongest prayer is, God, if this isn't for me, give me the strength to release it. Not, make them love me. Not, make them come back. But, if this is not healthy, free me. That prayer protects your future. Now, if you have been asking for a sign, perhaps the sign is not a stranger's prediction. Perhaps the sign is your own growing wisdom. Maybe you're noticing what you used to tolerate. Maybe you're no longer impressed by empty words. Maybe you are becoming peaceful alone. Maybe you're no longer desperate to prove yourself. Maybe you are finally saying no. Maybe you're beginning to understand that love should add to your life, not consume it. That is progress. Don't underestimate it. You may think nothing is happening because you don't have a relationship yet. But inside you, something may be changing. And sometimes the greatest preparation happens inside before anything changes outside. Jesus says, "My beloved child, you asked me to send love. I am also teaching you how to recognize love." That is the message. You asked for the person. But first you are learning the pattern. You are learning the difference between attention and affection. Between attraction and compatibility. Between intensity and intimacy. Between possession and commitment. Between words and actions. Between fantasy and reality. Between fear and peace. That education is priceless. Because once you learn it, you stop giving your heart to people who only want access to it. Now imagine the future version of you. You wake up one morning. You are not checking your phone hoping for a message. You are not wondering where you stand. You are not analyzing punctuation. You are not wondering whether they secretly want someone else. You are simply living. And beside you is someone who doesn't make you question whether they care. Not because they are perfect. Because they are consistent. They call when they say they will. They tell you the truth. They apologize. They listen. They remember small things. They respect your dreams. They celebrate your wins. They don't compete with your happiness. They want you to become more fully yourself. And you realize something. The waiting wasn't punishment. It was education. You needed to learn the difference. You needed to become strong enough to reject what once looked like love. You needed to stop chasing. You needed to stop proving. You needed to stop negotiating your worth. You needed to learn peace. And then you realize, the three psychics didn't need to tell you who you were. You finally knew. You finally understood. You were never impossible to love. You were simply trying to receive the right kind of love from the wrong people. And those are not the same thing. So tonight, release the question, why hasn't it happened yet? Replace it with, what can I become while I wait? Release, will anyone choose me? Replace it with, am I choosing people who are capable of loving me well? Release, what if I'm alone forever? Replace it with, I will not abandon myself just because I am alone today. Release, maybe I should settle. Replace it with, would rather wait for healthy love than rush into unhealthy attachment. That is strength. That is maturity. That is faith with wisdom. Now listen carefully because this final part is for the person who has been hurt the most. You may have thought your heart was broken beyond repair. But a broken heart is not a broken identity. You are still you. Your kindness is still yours. Your laughter is still yours. Your dreams are still yours. Your future is still yours. Someone may have taken years from you. Don't let them take the years that come next. Someone may have made you doubt yourself. Don't let their opinion become your permanent voice. Someone may have walked away. Don't spend the rest of your life standing at the door waiting for them to return. Turn around. There is a whole life behind you. There is a whole life ahead of you. And somewhere in that future may be a person who does not need to be convinced of your value. They simply see it. Not because a psychic told them. Not because a prophecy forced them. Because they meet you and recognize the kind of person they have been hoping to find. And maybe you will recognize them too. Not because fireworks explode. But because something feels calm. Because conversation feels natural. Because you don't have to perform. Because respect is mutual. Because the relationship has room to breathe. Because your values align. Because their actions match their promises. Because you can be vulnerable without being punished for it. Because you can say no and still be loved. Because you can disagree and still feel safe. Because you can grow together. That is what you should pray for. Not merely a face. A character. Not merely chemistry. Compatibility. Not merely attraction. Commitment. Not merely attention. Presence. Not merely promises. Actions. Not merely a soulmate fantasy. A real human being who is willing to build a real relationship. And you must be willing to become that person too. Because love is not only about what you receive. It is also about what you bring. So become honest. Become patient. Become accountable. Become emotionally available. Become courageous enough to communicate. Become wise enough to leave unhealthy situations. Become humble enough to apologize. Become strong enough to forgive without losing your boundaries. Become secure enough to celebrate someone else's success. Become mature enough to understand that conflict does not automatically mean the relationship is over. And become discerning enough to know when conflict is normal and when disrespect has become a pattern. That is preparation. Now I want you to imagine Jesus saying one final thing, my child, do not fear the love that has not arrived. Fear only the temptation to abandon yourself while waiting for it. And Archangel Michael says, stand strong. Guard your heart, but do not turn it into a prison. That is the balance. Guard your heart. But don't imprison it. Have standards. But don't become cynical. Learn from the past. But don't live there. Be cautious. But don't become incapable of receiving kindness. Take your time. But don't be afraid to love. You are allowed to hope. You are allowed to believe. You are allowed to dream. And you are allowed to say, maybe my story is not over. Because it isn't. One bad relationship is not the end. One divorce is not the end. One rejection is not the end. 10 rejections are not the end. A decade of waiting is not proof that you will always wait. Your current chapter does not have the authority to write the final chapter. So if you are still here, I want you to make one final declaration. Write, I will not settle for love that costs me my peace. And if you want, add, I choose healthy love. Not magic. Not superstition. Not a promise that a specific stranger will appear tomorrow. A decision. A standard. A reminder. Because the person you eventually love deserves the healthiest version of you. And you deserve the healthiest version of them. Maybe the face those 3 psychics described was you. Maybe it was symbolic. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was a story designed to make you think about the strange mysteries of love. But regardless of how you interpret it, one truth remains: you should never allow the absence of love today to convince you that you are unworthy of love tomorrow. You are not forgotten. You are not too late. You are not too broken. You are not too complicated. You are not disqualified. You are still becoming. And somewhere between the person you used to be and the person you are becoming, there may be a meeting you never planned. A conversation you never expected. A person you never knew existed. A connection you never saw coming. But don't spend your life staring at the horizon waiting for a stranger. Live. Heal. Grow. Love your people. Build your future. Strengthen your faith. Protect your peace. Become someone you are proud to be. And if love finds you while you're living that life, don't demand that it arrive like a movie. Let it be real. Let it be imperfect. Let it be honest. Let it grow. Let 2 people choose each other again and again. Because perhaps the greatest soulmate story is not, 3 psychics saw the same face. Perhaps the greatest story is, 2 people met after becoming the kind of people who could finally love each other well. So tonight, wherever you are, put down the fear. Put down the comparison. Put down the desperation. Put down the need to know exactly when. And carry something better. Hope. Not blind hope. Wise hope. The kind that says, I don't know when. I don't know where. I don't know how. But I know I will not betray myself just because I am waiting. That is powerful. And if the person meant for your life is somewhere out there, let them become ready too. Let them heal. Let them grow. Let them learn. Let them become someone who can recognize you when the moment comes. Because perhaps they are not searching for perfection. Perhaps they are searching for someone real. Someone who understands pain. Someone who knows loyalty. Someone who can laugh after crying. Someone who has learned that love is not about possession. Someone who has survived enough to appreciate peace. Someone who doesn't need a perfect face. They need a truthful heart. And maybe that's what those 3 descriptions were really pointing toward. Not your eyes. Not your smile. Not the shape of your face. But the person you are becoming. The person who has survived. The person who still believes. The person who refuses to settle. The person who finally understands that being chosen by the wrong person is not a victory. Being loved well by the right kind of person is what matters. So take a breath. Look at yourself. And say quietly, I am worthy of healthy love. Say it again. I am worthy of healthy love. One more time. I am worthy of healthy love. You don't have to chase anyone. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to force destiny. You don't have to beg someone to stay. You don't have to make yourself smaller. You don't have to become someone else. You simply have to keep becoming the person you were created to be. And when the right relationship enters your life, let it meet you there. Not desperate. Not broken. Not pretending. But whole enough to choose wisely. Strong enough to walk away when necessary. Soft enough to love. Wise enough to discern. And brave enough to believe that your past does not have to repeat itself. If you stayed until this final moment, remember the sentence that began everything: 3 strangers. 3 cities. 1 face. Your face. But perhaps the real message was never that someone somewhere saw you. Perhaps the real message is that it is time for you to see yourself. See your strength. See your worth. See your growth. See how far you've come. See the life still waiting for you. And if love is part of that future, let it come through a door that does not require you to destroy your peace to enter. Let it come with honesty. Let it come with respect. Let it come with consistency. Let it come with 2 people who are willing to choose each other freely. And until then, keep living. Keep healing. Keep praying. Keep growing. Keep your heart open, but keep your wisdom awake. Because you don't need to know the face of tomorrow to live faithfully today. And you don't need a psychic to tell you that you are worthy. You don't need a stranger to validate your future. You don't need a relationship to prove that your life matters. You matter now. You are valuable now. You are worthy now. And whatever comes next, let it meet you as someone who finally understands that truth. Amen.